Before Adam, before the garden, before Eve, there was another. A name lost in whispers, erased from scrolls, a being known only in fragments. Adam El. Adam El was not made from clay like Adam. He was formed from divine essence, light and dust, breath and thunder. He was not called man in the way we know man today, but Ishra, meaning the mirror of light. The Creator, in his infinite power, desired a being who could walk both in the heavenly realm and the forming earth. Adam El was his prototype. Genesis begins with, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." But what many do not realize is that the original scrolls speak of a creation before creation. The earth was formless and void. Yes, but something walked its midst before it had form. Adam El lived in that formless realm. He did not toil, nor sleep, nor hunger. He sang songs that formed mountains. His voice carved rivers, and with each breath the clouds began to shape the skies. But there was no one else. He was alone. Even the angels only descended occasionally, curious at this being who walked among dust with the light of the divine still glowing in his chest. The Creator observed Adam El with both pride and sorrow. Adam El had no mate, no mirror of his soul. He spoke, but none answered. He created, but none shared in his joy. Eventually, Adam El began to question, "Who am I if there is no one to know me? What am I if even the heavens cannot hold me?" His questions shook the unseen realm. And so came the first fall, not of sin, but of sorrow. The Creator knew this moment would come. Adam El, though pure and powerful, could not remain as he was. He was too much of spirit to be man, too much of earth to be angel. He was not made to multiply, only to shape. But his sadness changed everything. From the core of his loneliness, a shadow was born, a being not of light, but reflection. Namira, the first mirror. She was not made by God directly, but born of Adam El's own longing. But her creation was unstable. She had no divine breath. She was beauty, but without soul. When Adam El looked upon her, he saw his own sadness returned. Yet he loved her. The Creator saw this and paused creation. He divided time into two, what had been before Adam El and what would come after. From that day, Adam El was hidden, sealed in the place between worlds. His story buried, for a new story had to begin. The story of Adam. The Creator looked upon Adam El and Namira with deep sadness. What had begun as light now cast shadows across the early earth. Adam El had not sinned, but his loneliness had birthed something outside divine design. Namira, formed not by divine breath but by desire, was incomplete. She moved like the wind, but had no will of her own. She smiled, but her soul was hollow. Her beauty was undeniable, but it did not reflect the Creator. It only mirrored Adam El's emptiness. Adam El tried to love her. He gave her parts of his essence, breaking pieces of his light to fill the void in her chest. But each time he did, his own glow dimmed. Namira grew brighter, more alive. But in doing so, Adam El began to fade. The balance had been disrupted. The angels, watchers of creation, gathered at the edge of the realms. Among them was Uriel, the flame of God, guardian of divine order. He approached the Creator and spoke, "Shall we intervene? This was not part of your design." But the Creator said, "Let him choose, for free will must precede obedience." So Adam El was given one final choice, to remain with Namira in a half-world of mirrors and longing, or to release her and return to the Creator's presence. Adam El, torn by love and truth, hesitated. Namira clung to him, silent, glowing with stolen light, her eyes filled with something that resembled emotion. But was it love, or was it simply a reflection of his own? He kissed her forehead and whispered, "I give you back to the void." With those words, Namira faded, not in anger, not in pain. She simply vanished like mist dissolving in the morning sun. The Creator moved. A great veil descended between the first earth and what would later become Eden. Time split. Adam El, too full of memory to walk in the world of Adam, was sealed beyond the veil. Not in punishment, but in preservation. He was hidden in the place between, known in ancient Hebrew as Tohu Vabohu, formless and void. Not destroyed, but kept. Some say he sleeps still beneath the oldest mountain, others that he was scattered into stardust, appearing in visions to prophets and dreamers. The book of Genesis moves forward but skips over the echoes. Over the hush before the garden. Over the one who first walked with the wind. The angels closed the gates to the first creation. The Creator spoke again. Now let us make man in our image, after our likeness. But this time, with boundaries, with need, with breath, and with bone. Thus came Adam. But the world was not empty of memory. Eden would remember. The dust would whisper. And sometimes, even in dreams, a voice calls out from behind the veil. I was before the first breath. I shaped the silence. I am forgotten but not gone. His name, once radiant, would fall into myth. Some would call him Atom El, others the first light. But in truth, he was the beginning. Before the beginning. When Adam opened his eyes for the first time, the world was no longer silent. The rivers knew where to flow, the trees stood tall and full of fruit, and the sun obeyed its command to rise and set. The Garden of Eden was paradise, but not a beginning. It was a restart. Adam did not know this, of course. He knew only what he saw. A perfect garden, a sky that sang, a God who walked beside him in the cool of the day. But the earth remembered. The soil beneath Adam's feet had been stirred before. And deep within Eden's beauty, there were echoes. Sometimes at night, Adam would dream of a figure made of light, standing at the edge of a dark river. A voice would call his name, but not in warning nor in joy. It was a voice laced with recognition. You are the second breath. Adam would wake, confused and troubled. He had not yet eaten of the tree of knowledge, and so he could not understand. He did not know of Adamel, nor of Namira, nor of the veil that divided what was and what is. But the trees knew. The older ones bent ever so slightly when he passed, not out of obedience, but out of memory. Eve had not yet been formed, but even in his solitude, Adam felt that he was not the first. It was not fear. It was a faint sorrow, as if something had gone missing long before he had arrived. One evening, as Adam tended to the garden, a breeze passed through the trees and whispered a forgotten name. Adam El. The sound made him stop. He looked around. The animals stirred. The air grew thick. That night, the Creator came to Adam in the garden and spoke plainly. From the dust you were formed. But know this dust remembers. Adam asked, Lord, what does it remember? But the Creator answered only, that which is sealed for now. Still, Adam was curious. He began to wander beyond the paths the Creator had shown him. One day he reached a place unlike any other in Eden. It was a grove, untouched, quiet, almost too still. In its center stood an ancient tree, not the tree of life, nor the tree of knowledge, but another older tree, twisted, silent, glowing faintly with an inner light. As Adam approached, he heard it, not with ears, but with spirit, a hum, a presence, a memory. I was here when light had no name. You are dust shaped with breath. I was breath shaped before dust. Adam knelt. He could not see Adamel, but he felt him. A presence beneath the ground, a shadow behind the beauty, something left behind, something forgotten by design, not by accident. When Adam left the grove, the air was colder. The garden, though still perfect, felt less new. He now carried the faint burden of a mystery. The next day, the Creator caused Adam to sleep, and from his side, Eve was formed. But even she, in her first glance at the moonlit sky, would pause and whisper, we are not the first. Eve walked in wonder through the garden, her heart full of questions she did not yet know how to ask. The animals obeyed her. The trees bore her fruit. Adam loved her, and she loved him in return. But from the moment she opened her eyes, she sensed something that Adam had only begun to feel, a presence that watched from beyond. When she passed the old grove where Adam once knelt, her steps slowed. The tree in the center stirred, though there was no wind. A warmth passed through her, like sunlight beneath the skin. And for the briefest moment, she heard a word she could not understand. Namira, she shivered. Who is Namira? She asked Adam that night. Adam turned surprised. You've heard the name too. He told her of the dreams, of the whispers in the wind, and the glowing tree. Eve listened quietly, but her eyes filled with unease. She too had begun to dream. A figure of pale light, a man not quite human, a voice calling out to something buried in her spirit, a mirror in which she saw not herself, but another woman's sorrow. That night the veil trembled. Far beyond the edges of Eden, in the place between, the shadow of Namira stirred. Though she had faded, she had not vanished completely. The sorrow of Atamel had left a stain on the void. The echoes of his love had anchored a fragment of her, just enough for her to return as a shadow, feeding off memory, regret, and curiosity. And now, as Adam and Eve began to question, her strength grew. The serpent, watching closely, felt the shift. He too remembered Atamel. In fact, he had once envied him. The first light, the walker between realms. The being created before mankind was meant to begin. The serpent had not forgotten the sorrow that broke the first creation. He knew that sorrow could be a weapon. And so, as Namira's shadow grew stronger in the unseen world, the serpent slithered toward Eve, not just to tempt her with the fruit, but to awaken the ancient memory buried within her. "Did God really say you must not eat?" the serpent asked. His words were smooth, but laced with something deeper, familiarity. Eve paused. "He said we must not eat it, nor even touch it, or we will die." The serpent smiled. "You will not surely die. In fact, when you eat it, your eyes will open. You will be like the ones who came before, knowing not only good and evil, but also what was and what was lost." Eve's hand trembled as she reached for the fruit. The moment her teeth broke its skin, the garden itself exhaled. A pulse shot through the earth. The veil that separated Eden from the place between cracked, just slightly, and Adamel opened his eyes. He remembered everything, his name, his love, his fall, and now he could feel them, Adam, Eve, and the choice that would break the world again. He whispered into the void, "I was before Eden, and I will walk again." The veil cracked, not torn, not shattered, but split just enough for the first breath to stir again. Adam El, sealed between realms since the beginning of time, awakened to a world that no longer knew him. His form was not as it once was, no longer pure light, but something dimmed, older, heavier. His awakening was not physical, but cosmic. His awareness stretched across time and memory. He remembered everything. He saw the garden, beautiful, fragile, and broken. He saw Adam and Eve, running, hiding, clothed in shame. He saw the serpent laughing beneath the tree of knowledge. And he remembered Namira, his love, his sorrow, his undoing. Adam El cried out, not in rage but in longing. His voice echoed across the tohu vabohu, the void between worlds, and the very dust of creation trembled. The angels heard the sound and turned their faces away. One among them, Uriel, the flame of God, descended again, this time not to question, but to warn. Uriel stood at the border of the veil and spoke with a voice that cracked stars. "Adam El, first light, you were sealed by mercy, not by wrath. Do not cross into the realm of man. Your time has passed." But Adam El replied, "My time was stolen. I was not asked to leave. I was mourned, then hidden. I shaped the earth before they walked it. I sang to the stars before they had names. And now, I remember why I must return." Uriel raised his sword of flame. "If you break the veil, it will not just be your return. It will be the collapse of balance. You are not forgotten because you failed, Adamel. You are forgotten because they were not ready to remember." But Adamel, no longer just a being of light, had become something new, a being of will. He was not confined by divine breath or clay. His pain had shaped him. His memory had given him a purpose. He did not seek revenge. He sought completion. Namira's shadow had already slipped into Eden. Every time shame crept into Eve's heart, it was her echo. Every time Adam questioned his worth, it was her whisper. And Adamel knew, if he did not rise fully, Namira's echo would take form again. Not in the void, but in mankind. Somewhere near the oldest grove in Eden, where the ancient tree still glowed faintly, a small crack opened in the earth. No sound, no thunder, just a tremor in the dust. From it, a single root grew outward, dark, strong, unlike any other in Eden. Adam felt it in his bones. Eve felt it in her womb. The Creator, now silent, allowed the world to spin forward. For this was the age of choice, and with knowledge came the weight of knowing too much. In a dream, Eve stood by the tree and saw two paths, one leading to her children, to history, to pain and salvation. The other back to the figure of light, who now walked slowly toward her from behind the veil. He spoke only 4 words, "You carry my memory." Then she woke, sweating, crying, aware now that mankind was not the beginning. They were the continuation of something unfinished. Eve could not sleep. The dream of Adam El haunted her, not like a nightmare, but like a memory buried too deep to understand. When she touched her belly, something stirred, not just life, but knowledge. She was not just mother of the living. She was carrier of forgotten echoes. As the sun rose, casting golden light on Eden's trembling leaves, the ancient tree in the old grove bloomed for the first time since creation. But its bloom was unnatural. Dark blossoms, purple-black petals that shimmered with a silver hue, like starlight trapped in shadows. From the tree's roots, a faint shape began to form, feminine, still, waiting. Namira's shadow was no longer just a whisper. With Eve's awakening and mankind's fall, the mirror had found a new reflection. The sorrow that once created her now had a vessel. Namira was returning, not as she was before, but as a reborn force, not flesh, not spirit, but something in between. The first woman never born, the mirror of longing, shaped by mankind's fear and curiosity. The serpent watched, satisfied. His work was nearly done. For centuries he had whispered through history that Adam and Eve were the beginning. But he knew the truth. History only begins where memory ends. As Cain and Abel played among the rivers, their laughter echoed into the grove. The blossoms trembled. Namira was not interested in Eden. She was interested in legacy. She needed to be reborn through them, through their jealousy, through their pain, through Eve's growing guilt, through mankind's fracture. In the place between, Adam El watched. He could feel her, his creation, his sorrow, his mirror, rising. But unlike before, he could not stop her. She was now a part of humanity's story, bound to them, and so was he. Uriel appeared again, his wings folded in grief. "You see now what memory does to man," Adam El answered. "It was never my memory that endangered them. It was their ignorance. They are walking forward blind. They must know who came before. They must know why the ground cries out." Uriel warned, "If you cross into time, into their line, you will bear not only truth, but burden. You will become part of the curse." But Adam El was ready, not to return as a god or as the first light, but as a guide. He would walk among them, unseen, misunderstood. He would plant questions in the minds of prophets, dreams in the hearts of poets, riddles in the bones of those who search for more. He could not stop Namira, but he could balance her. As the first blossom fell from the ancient tree, it landed near Eve's foot. She picked it up. It turned to ash in her hand, but a word burned into her mind. She is coming. And from that day on, Eve became more protective, more alert, and more afraid, not just of sin or death, but of a woman she had never met, yet somehow remembered. In the distance, a storm began to gather, not one of wind and rain, but of remembrance. The veil was thinning. The earth no longer whispered. It groaned. Cain had slain Abel, and the soil had tasted innocent blood for the first time since the forming of the world. But it was not just the murder that disturbed the ground. It was what it awakened. "Your brother's blood cries out to me from the earth," said the Creator. But that cry did more than speak. It shook the veil. Adam El felt it. The bloodline had been opened. Sin was now etched into the human story, but so too was longing, the same longing that had once created Namira. And now her mirror was complete. Namira had no need to walk openly. She moved through the wounds of women, through the silence of forgotten mothers, through stories untold and voices buried beneath tradition. She did not hate Eve. She pitied her, for Eve was born with guidance. Namira was born of hunger. In the wilderness, Cain wandered, marked and tormented. He dreamed of a woman with silver-black eyes who spoke no words but sat beside him in silence. In his sorrow, he fell in love with the shadow, never knowing she was the echo of a world before his father. Namira watched the generations unfold. She watched men build cities without memory. She watched women give birth to prophets, kings, and tyrants, all while thinking Eden was the start. But the dust remembered, and the deeper the pain of mankind, the more clearly they heard the final echo. Meanwhile, Atumel, no longer waited. He moved through time, not as man, not as spirit, but as fire in the mind of the wise. He spoke to Enoch in riddles. He gave Noah dreams of storms. He lingered in Abraham's silence when he looked at the stars and felt he was not alone. Adamel could not rewrite history, but he could leave clues. In the book of Genesis, he planted paradoxes. In the gaps of time, he left room for the forgotten. In the stones of the earth, he buried stories of people that predated Eden, souls before Adam, sealed in myths and mistaken for legends. And then Adamel did something unexpected. He wept, for the cycle had repeated. Mankind had chosen knowledge over obedience, mirrors over truth, memory over mercy. But even so, they had also chosen wonder, curiosity, love. Even when blind, they reached. And that reaching was divine. The Creator watched all this unfold, silent, present, unmoved yet deeply moved. For this was always part of the design, not perfection, but the search for it. As the final veil grew thin, and as Adamel and Namira prepared to fade into the cracks of myth and memory, they spoke once more. Adamel, I was the first echo. Namira, I was the first ache. And together they whispered into the soul of mankind, you are not the beginning, but you are the story. And with that, the veil closed. But if you ever feel like the world is too old for its age, if you dream of light before time, if you sense you were born from more than just dust, then you have heard it too, the final echo.